As someone who's getting older, I don't quite have the time that I used to watch a lot of shows that I did in the past. That's why I appreciate anime like Death Note so much, not only because of the great storytelling, but because it tells its story in a condensed way without becoming overly bloated. With that said, this series in my opinion dies along with L, as most things afterwards are essentially jokes compared to the first part of the anime. Whenever I rewatch Death Note, I usually only watch up until the time skip, because afterwards the story becomes a complete mess that it really never recovers from. Today I'll be breaking down some of the biggest issues that I have with the second part of Death Note and why the story ended up suffering because of it. So we are first introduced to Light and Ryuk, two characters who share this duality of boredom, as they have grown sick and tired of the monotony of everyday life for different reasons. Because of this, Ryuk drops the Death Note into the human world. Light picks it up and uses it and tries to become Earth's ruler by cleansing the world of all crime, and does so by killing people. I know, the hypocrisy is hilarious. Then the awkward detective L shows up to stop Light, and thus the greatest cat and mouse game since Tom and Jerry occurs.
But Tom and Jerry?
Yes, the cartoon?
Yeah, Jerry is here in my room.
I'm sorry?
Jerry is here in my room.
You have a mouse in the room?
Yeah. Please, come here, and when you come here, bring Tom with you.
As both characters try to figure out the other's true identity so they can kill each other, all while trying to maintain the secrecy of their own. And while this is happening, Ryuk is sitting back enjoying the whole show like it's a fucking sitcom. A fascinating premise to a story. And while some of the issues I have with the second part of Death Note stem from the issues that started in part 1, Part 1 is still nonetheless an amazing execution of high quality storytelling during a time when something fresh was needed. I love Battle Shonen just as much as the next guy, but it's nice to see creatives make stories that break up the status quo. But all this changes after L dies. To this day, watching Light and Nier battle is like watching a story about the Joker, but with Green Arrow as his main adversary. The attempt is there, but it's not nearly the same nor as good as the classic Batman versus the Joker. If anything, Green Arrow versus the Joker would be much better to watch than Light versus Nier, because at least Green Arrow is his own distinct character and not some cheap knockoff. Anyways, Light and L, just like Batman and the Joker, are essentially two sides of the same coin. I won't get into all the philosophical reasonings as to why I think that, but I bring that up to mean that the dynamic between them works so well together that no one can really replace the other in that dynamic and then expect it to work as well, because it won't. Yet the decisions the makers of the manga either didn't get this or didn't care enough to get this, as they try to recreate the dynamic of L and Light by just replacing L with Nier, which was just plain ridiculous. I don't know about y'all, but there's nothing more annoying than copycat characters that writers create. It's such a sign of, I don't know what to do next, so I'll just make a cheap copy of what I know worked. And we see this in stories far too much. It almost always ends in disaster. It just shows a lack of creativity, which does not make sense, because one would have to be pretty creative to make a story like Death Note in the first place. Nier is such an obvious, cheap copy of L, it instantly started to make the story worse for me. If this was the plan all along, then they should have just kept L alive and then finalized the series with either L or Light's death. Nier brings nothing new to the story and is just an overall annoying and unnecessary presence. Mello, on the other hand, at least had a unique personality to himself, despite him being unneeded in the story as well. I just wish these were my only issues with the story after the time skip, but the problems just expand after this. The writers, after trying to convince the audience that Nier can replace L in this dynamic of L and Light, then try to continue the same cat and mouse game that L and Light were in, with Nier and Mello being the replacement of L, which just annoys me further. This is just another example of complacency, as they're not really adding anything new to the story, but rather recycling the same story tropes they've been telling with worse character. The constant accusations of Light being Kira, the constant trying to find out who Kira is, the back and forth between Light and Nier just gets daunting, as it's literally just the same events being reshuffled over and over again, as this was quite literally the same type of events happening in part 1. Like, why the fuck after a 5-year time skip are we still on the same topics? With L dead and Light being the presumptive winner of their battle, this will be a perfect opportunity to focus on some of the other goals Light had when he first received the Death Note. But unfortunately, the story just continues to stay in his comfort zone of repetitive talking points. Maybe things would have been better if Nier and Mello were actually anywhere near, no pun intended, as smart as L. Like, the series tries so hard to pretend they are. Mello, as much as I like his change of pace as a character, is an absolute criminal who deserved his ending. This guy was supposed to be a candidate successor to L, a law enforcement official and the greatest detective in the world. There's obvious rules and regulations as law enforcement that one must abide by, that L himself did his best to uphold as well. Mello just seemingly bypasses this and receives no repercussions as well. Blackmailing the Japanese task force, kidnapping Sayu, working with gangs, murdering people. Like, what the fuck? How the hell was he able to operate like some damn vigilante and no one is trying to convict him of these crimes? Nier himself knew damn well all the shit Mello was doing and just brushed it off like it was nothing. And speaking of Nier, he doesn't really accomplish much himself in terms of showcasing his intelligence or skill as a detective, but essentially has everything handed to him as Light basically did all the damn homework. Even during major parts of the story like narrowing down who Kira was, it only happened because Sito's stupid ass randomly blurted out the fake rules of the Death Note to Mello, who then told Nier. There's very minimal detective work that Nier does on his own. Everything else is really just handed to him on a silver platter. Then there's the ending. The damn ending that really takes the BS to another level. Are you really mean for people to believe that Mikami would act out on his own, despite his reverence for Kira, not detect that someone was following him from the SPK, and that this SPK member was then able to break into Mikami's safety deposit box without detection, steal the Death Note, and replicate the thousands of names and condition of said Death Note with a fake replica, and then place the fake Death Note back in the safety deposit box all in one day? Originally, my theory was that the SPK must have received some court order that allowed them to do this, but this is simply a convenient theory to cover up the BS, when in reality, the SPK, led by Nier, just broke the law to obtain access to Mikami's safety deposit. Which shouldn't be surprising given the fact that breaking the law as apparent detectives is just commonplace for these two idiots. Light creates the perfect plan to end Nier, but the story goes out of its way to make Nier the clear winner, because you can't have a villain winning at the end. And this is probably the primary reason why part 2 of Death Note is the way it is. The only amazing part of this lasting section of the show is when Light maniacally laughs as he reveals himself to be Kira, and that final look of him dead on the stairway. Regardless of how negative this might have sounded, trust me, this BS in part 2 is nowhere close enough to ruin Death Note for me. Anyways, thanks for watching. Guys, do me a favor, leave a like if you enjoyed this and subscribe as well. Take care.